morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a terrific show for you today to start off the week. We've got David Weigel of Semaphore, we've got Olivia Reingold of the Free Press, and we'll of course be talking about all the latest Trump cabinet picks, speculation, etc., what's happening there. It'll be a lot of fun, Nomiki.
So much news, Robbie, but I want to know what's on your radar.
I'll tell you all about it. Well, Kamala Harris has decisively lost the race for the White House. She is not going to be president unless Joe Biden were to step down before Donald Trump's inauguration. Does that sound crazy? It is. But there are Democrats who think he should do that. Let's take a listen to Jamal Simmons, a former comms director for Vice President Harris. Watch this.
Joe Biden's been a phenomenal president. He's lived up to so many of the promises he's made. There's one promise left that he could fulfill, being a transitional figure. He could resign the presidency in the next 30 days. Make Kamala Harris the president of the United States.
Whoa.
It would absolve her from being able to from having to oversee the January 6th transition, right, of her own defeat, and it would make sure that it would dominate the news at a point where Democrats have to learn drama and transparency and doing things that the public want to see. Is the time. This is the moment for us to change the entire perspective of how Democrats.
Okay, this
operate.
has now jumped from an internet meme to a Sunday morning show.
Jamal's out here right now in the
Congratulations.
season of House of Cards.
Similarly, the scholar Norman Ornstein wrote on X that he was warming to the idea of Biden resigning early so Harris can be queen for a day. I have a lot to say about all of that, but first, let's reflect on this historic moment. This is truly something I never thought I'd see. Some Democratic strategists and media figures are actually, finally, calling on Joe Biden to resign as president. It's about time, I say. Their opinions, after all, are finally catching up with those of the American people who have had serious questions about Biden's cognitive fitness and his ability to serve and perform the most important job on planet Earth. Even before Biden's disastrous debate performance in July spelled the end of his candidacy, the American people had collectively expressed widespread concerns. Polls showed that 76% of voters were concerned about Biden's age. 62% had major concerns. That was a poll, by the way, from February, which feels like a million years ago. It's sad, but inarguable, that Biden's ability to conduct the performative acts of the presidency, answering questions from the media, giving speeches, etc., has declined dramatically even since then. Now, the debate made clear what virtually everyone worried was the case. The President of the United States is no longer capable of being president. We all know what happened next. At the highest levels, the elite donor class of the Democratic Party forced Biden from the ticket, canceling his re-election effort. Their argument implicitly was that Biden could not win because the American people no longer believed that he could serve another term. Even though questions about his ability to serve right now are also relevant, it's not as if the office of the presidency takes a vacation until January. World events are developing. The Middle East is in chaos. Russia seeks to press its advantage against Ukraine. China is paying attention. We need a president who is functional at all hours of the day and the night, not just during a 6-hour window between 6 a.m. and 4 p.m., 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., excuse me, is I think what they actually said. That's something, by the way, that those in his inner circle have all but admitted. This is a president who can only fully work, fully capable during that limited time window. Which brings me back to those voices on the Democratic side, who I led with this segment hearing from, who now think Joe Biden should step aside and make Kamala Harris temporarily president. Let's think for a moment about what they're saying. We should make Kamala Harris the president not because Joe Biden is old and incapable, but because it would help break that glass ceiling, and it would be a historic moment to have the first black female president. This is, in my view, insulting and infantilizing. I can't state it any better than the Atlantic's Tyler Austin Harper, who writes on X, "It's crazy there are more people demanding Biden resign so he can make Kamala the first black woman president than there are people demanding Biden resign because he can't reliably function after sunset and has no business controlling America's nuclear arsenal. What a world." Indeed, the idea that Biden should resign just so Harris can, have her day in the sun is crazy. In fact, it could harm the very causes its supporters seem to care about, the election of a female president. If a black woman can only gain the presidency because of an early retirement, doesn't that undermine the achievement? In fact, I think it could embolden racism and sexism by causing people to shrug and say the first black woman president didn't earn it. This is certainly not the way for Kamala Harris to overcome accusations of being a DEI choice, a DEI hire. She had her chance to win the presidency, and she came up short. So it goes. any Democrat who seriously endorses the idea that Biden should resign for Harris's benefit and not for the nation's benefit because, well, he's too old to run the country, is a fundamentally unserious person. I'm sorry. They're interested in playing games. Kudos to those liberals who resisted this temptation, including ex-commentator Ed Krasenstein, who writes, "It's a stupid idea for Biden to resign and give Harris the presidency. Let the first woman president prove that she can win it herself without a man giving it to her. We will have a female president. It's just a matter of time. Don't ruin the moment by doing it this way. This isn't how it should happen." He's quite right. I also stand with conservative commentator Emily Jashinsky, who said bluntly, Biden should resign because he's senile, not because he can bless womankind with a paternalistic, shortcut. And I think that's very much to the point.
It's okay. So Jamal
This is
Simmons.
silly.
This is Jamal Simmons wanting to work in the White House, like really, 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 really bad. Like he was her communications director at one point. People are losing their minds. I had a migraine for 2 days because there was smoke in New York, but because of all the fires, but also because people are losing their minds. I couldn't keep up with it. The texts coming in, the crazy takes. Everyone wants to know what's going on in the DNC, asking me for, my take on things. The takes are all over the place. I don't even want to share some of them.
Yeah.
There's talks, we're going to talk about the Supreme Court later. There's talks about filtering Kamala Harris into the Supreme Court.
She doesn't want to be on the Supreme Court. That's a job you have to work really hard at.
That's not.
I didn't mean that even as a dig at Kamala Harris, but it's just it's a tough job.
It's a tough job, of course. And let's give her a little bit of credit in that she was handed a very difficult situation to run a race in, a couple months. She didn't really have time for this, but I would have basically purged a lot of the Biden campaign team that was already failing in a lot of ways, and they layered them. That's what they say in campaign world, is where they push people out and bring other people in. But she didn't have a time to build her own team, to really work with the DNC. And frankly, even in these swing states, it's still quite close. It went in the wrong direction, clearly, but it did show that she made that much progress over a short amount of time, whereas I think Biden probably would have been wiped out, and it would have been much, much worse.
Well, certainly
dark days for the Democrats. Like, we think it's dark now. I think it would have been much darker under Biden.
Well, if Biden had been the candidate,
yeah,
sure. I mean, I'm forced to concede, if you look at the polls, that he was way, way behind Trump, and she had certainly improvements on that. It made it closer, although this is ending up being. This is
it's a wipeout.
This is more of a blowout than it wasn't a blowout in 202016. It was.
I'm colorblind.
He won the popular
I don't know
vote.
if you know that.
What?
I'm colorblind. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
So that map that I predicted, it was the map.
Okay, I see.
It was the map.
I see. Okay.
But I'm going to defend myself again. Those states, the swing states, were down to a couple points. It wasn't, it was all within the margin of error, and we thought the momentum was going the other way. And, the right wing has been very good at radicalizing young guys online. I got to throw one.
I think the Democratic Party has been very good at radicalizing young guys online, away from Democratic
But we're not
politics.
the ones pushing a lot of these issues into our narrative.
Oh.
I will say she has been president. She was president on November 21st, 2019, for about an hour and 20 minutes when Joe Biden had his colonoscopy.
That doesn't count. Well, then Dick Cheney was
Dick Cheney was always the president. What are you talking about?
Dick Cheney was president
always
the whole
the
time.
president.
Yeah.
All right, last thing I'll tell you is, if you haven't seen The Diplomat, and I don't want to do any spoiler alerts, but The Diplomat Season 2, I feel like it's playing out in real life the way The Diplomat. It's wild. So
I was a big fan of 24. I've watched every season of 24, and there was, like every president dies or is incapacitated and replaced by their vice president who's secretly a terrorist. This plot line happens like 18 times on 24. So that's what I was thinking of hearing this. But yeah, just make her queen for a day. It would set back the cause. Like, you want to have the first black female president actually win it outright, not just be gifted it as some kind of boon. That defeats the whole purpose.
1,000,000%.
Yeah.
It's offensive, actually.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we agree. That doesn't happen a lot. How nice. We've got a lot more to talk about on Rising. We'll get to some of the prospective picks for the cabinet, for other positions. Trump has named his chief of staff. This is a historic moment. First female chief of staff. We'll talk about that coming up next.